Hey 3DMJers, this is Andrea Valdez and you're listening to the 3D Muscle Journey podcast. Today you're going to hear our three head coaches, Jeff Albert, Brad Loomis, and Alberto Nunez, talk to you all about how to visually assess a physique. Topics for the episode include what types of photos and videos we expect from our athletes, what poses and lighting we require in those photos and videos, how the coaches learn an athlete's body via testing and feedback, what we even mean when we say flat, full, or spilled, when we expect each of those looks from an athlete, how we manipulate an athlete's fullness when desired, how we balance visual data versus body weight data, when training videos matter more than physique videos, and a whole lot more. As always, if you have any feedback or comments on this episode, go to 3dmusclejourney.com or our YouTube channel at youtube.com/team3dmj and leave it under podcast number 173. So let's get into it. Here is flat, full, or spilled visual coaching adjustments with Alberto Nunez, Brad Loomis, and Jeff Alberts.
All right, guys. So how are we doing? Who is full? Who is flat? Let me get the status update on everyone. Jeff, how are you doing? Because actually, we all are in kind of different places, I think, ish.
You know
right?
what? Yeah. You know what? I'm flat today. It's my third low calorie day, and my carbs are a little bit lower than I typically have them. So I can tell that my muscles are on the flatter side, and it's not a good look. It's almost like a look of ugh. Maybe I should increase calories because I'm getting a little insecure. But I think we'll talk a little bit more later about why that's probably not a good idea to do that. But yeah, I feel flat energy-wise. I feel, I think it kind of correlates together, you know? So that's kind of my status right now with the flatness, fullness.
Okay, flat but happy. How about you, Brad? How you doing?
I'm perpetually full. I'm gaining weight, so I'm perpetually full. I don't think there is a period of time when I'm flat, except for maybe when I very, very first wake up in the morning, take a pee, haven't eaten in about, probably 8 or 10 hours. So yeah, I'm perpetually full. How about you, Bert?
Man, that's how bodybuilders do. We ask each other, not how you doing. It's like, how full or flat are you? I had actually, this was my first legit refeed this past weekend. So usually it's like I'll have my first meal and then I'm like, I'm done. And this time I'm like, no, you need to run it the whole way through because training's been awesome and you want to keep it awesome. So take care of business, have all the breakfast cereal you need basically. And today's Wednesday, so it's been 2 low days. And since I went decently hard with those, I am medium. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. It's I'm not as full as I was Monday morning, but still in a good place. If I needed to run into a house that's burning down the street, I'd definitely take off my shirt and look extra heroish. Yeah. So that's the status and full. Flat, I guess all these ways that we describe the way bodybuilders look, I think to us it's just kind of, we've just lived with this stuff forever. So it's just, we just speak it without necessarily, I think especially for the casual fan or someone who's just kind of getting into it. We had a question recently. It was a post that I kind of instigated. It was on our team page and someone asked, basically, how can you tell what is full, what is flat? And that's what we do. I mean, people pay us to help them stay objective, right? And we look at the data and we try to communicate with them what's going on and we make or don't make decisions based off that. So I guess before we get into what it looks like, for you guys in regards to getting pictures from your athletes, whether it's a muscle gaining phase, a fat loss phase, a contest prep, a peak week, how do you guys prefer that being sent over to you?
Jeff, you want to start? Or you want me to?
Yeah, go ahead.
Me myself, I you know how I am, you guys. I like to put things in my spreadsheets, and so usually I'll have a tab in there and I'll kind of throw up all my pictures in there, and usually I'll put little date stamps on them or body weight stamps, and stuff like that. And I'll just put them right there, kind of in its own little separate tab in the spreadsheet. And it's pretty easy, with today's technology. You can just I can take a person's video and just kind of screenshot the pose that it is that I want, or the look that it is that I want. And when it first starts out, it's got nothing to do with flatness or fullness. It's just kind of like, how is our progress right now?
Yeah.
There's two different body weights right there that really are only about 2 pounds apart, but at the same time they look dramatically different. And so it's kind of just, I don't know, when I save the photos, it's kind of far and few between at the beginning. But then, of course, when you start getting to the end, I'm kind of spoiled in some instances, because sometimes clients will send stuff over to me. Okay, here's Monday, here's Tuesday, here's last week, and then here's today, And boy, you got to love those clients, don't you? When they just kind of put all of their stuff with the picture collage software and they put everything right out there for you. That makes our job so much easier. But those that don't do it, it's fine. I figure it out. I kind of put everything in that little tab in the protocol, and as we get closer, here's what people looked like 2 days after the refeed. Here's what they looked like, after this particular meal, this particular food, what they looked like after a hard day of training in a refeed, or a not so hard day of training in a refeed. That's how I kind of like to see things, more so in terms of the topic that we're going to talk about. Not really even using the stuff from a while ago, when we're looking at how was fat loss going, how are we looking and holding on to our size. But now we're actually looking at, okay, this was 2 weeks ago on Monday, this was last week on Monday, this was today, and how they all compare as far as that goes. So that's kind of how I like to see things myself. And, shout out to those athletes that are super anal about all of their ducks in a row and actually put little picture collages together for us, because, man, that sure makes our job a lot easier.
So you said video, Brad. So do you prefer video in regards to keeping track of progress more so than pictures? Yeah.
You know what? I need the stuff in front of me is the big thing, and some people, it's easier for video because they just take the device, hit the timer, hit record, and then they just go through their posing, thing. And so, yeah, I'll get away with it, when those people that find it more convenient to do that. Others prefer the photos. Some people they'll stand in front of the camera for a half an hour out of their day, kind of getting the perfect photo. And so if they're going to do that, shoot, that's fine with me too. But it's kind of like my numbers. I want to have a number versus no number. I want to have something that's a guess versus a zero, And so if they send me a video, I just need the stuff in front of me, and then I'll kind of figure it out from there.
See, I'm a video guy, so you're a picture guy. I'm a video guy. Jeff, what do you like?
It depends. I kind of like both, but it depends on the context. So if we're talking like someone who's off season, we're trying to put some muscle on, the visuals are going to be less frequent. I don't need to see those every single week. Sometimes every other week, but more than likely it's going to be maybe once a month might suit better, or maybe even quarterly. Yeah. Especially if you're dealing with someone with a little bit higher, body fat level. You're not going to see a whole lot visually happening, from week to week when you're off season trying to put some muscle on, when the body fat is up a little bit. So if someone wants to send me photos, I think that suits fine during that time. If they prefer video, I think that suits fine well. Now, if we're talking about someone who's contest prepping, it's kind of, same type of context early on. I can usually have a good eye visually with good photos or good video early on. But as we start changing and getting leaner, then things change a little bit more so. And I want to see actually people moving a little bit more. So, deeper into prep, when you're getting a little bit leaner, I want to see what this person actually looks like when they're getting into the pose. Because you can see them actually flexing. Because in a photo, most of the times people are setting timers. They don't, unless they have the luxury of someone taking the pictures for them. But oftentimes, hey, I only have 10 seconds to get this picture off. So it might be hit or miss as far as this person's actually getting their full flex on. So can you actually see their true conditioning if they're in a partial pose? So I just want to, like, the closer we get to, let's say, stage time, if it's a bodybuilder, then I probably prefer video over photos. Again, if it's a super inconvenience for someone with video, then I might say, okay, let's just get the photos, because I don't want to cause a ton of stress, especially if they're getting really close to showtime. But yeah, the higher quality photos or video we can get, the better, especially the deeper into contest prep as someone's getting pretty lean.
Yeah, yeah. That's actually opened up another can of worms in my head, but we'll get into that later. This is because remote coaching. I think a lot of people were kind of, when it first came about, suspicious of it, because it's like, the limitations, right? And to be honest, it's like with all the devices we have now, it's if anything, quite often we're trying to get people to kind of slow down when it comes to some of the background noise data.
Yeah.
Like it's like, Jeff, I measured my biceps and they're down 1/2 inch. Something like that, right. So, I personally, I like video. I like video because, and I like the thing that you mentioned about the intervals, Jeff, in regards to like how frequently, because if someone's like performance is just going across the board, like just up, it's like, do we really need to take pictures? Why do you suppose that's happening? It's probably because we're gaining some muscle. So actually, to connect that thing that popped into my head, I think in the off season, it's like physique pictures, like you said, even quarterly is okay. Monthly, sure. Anything more than that, it's like, I don't think it's very useful.
I think like one caveat to that, it can kind of hold people accountable too. Because like some people have adherence issues to, let's say, diet. Absolutely. They tend to eat a little bit more. Yes. It's like, oh, I gotta send coach a picture in 2 weeks. I better not.
Yeah.
I better stay true to what I'm supposed to do. So that's the only caveat I would say to that one. But yeah, for the most part, I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, off season, I think I'm more a stickler on like, can you get me training videos? Because the numbers only tell you so much, right? It's like, okay, well, that curl's moved awfully fast. I'd like to see what that curl looks like. And I think that's actually like more important, But in regards to just physique, bottom line, how that's going, I think I like videos because sometimes you catch things that maybe you couldn't in pictures. And maybe that for example, like I like front and back relaxed poses because there's the least amount of things that can go wrong in those. It's like you do your little Gumby pose. Like, it's pretty easy to like flex. Like that's what people look like, right? They look like Gumby.
Gumby.
Especially when they start out, they look like Gumby.
That's gonna be my cue now when I'm in the audience, like Gumby. Squeeze your cheeks, Gumby.
There's a lot less flickering that happens in the front and in a Gumby pose, right? It's a lot less, like, back double bicep, notorious for. It's like you can have the guy take 4 different pictures same day, and each one is like like there's just a huge difference, especially with newer guys, right? So I like the front and back relax because flex those muscles, they kind of tend to stay on. But also I think the benefit of video is sometimes when they're like moving into their poses, you will catch little details that you're like, oh, okay, look, that wasn't there. That little flicker on the side of the quad, homegirl here didn't have that just like 3 weeks ago. We're moving in the right direction. So I like that bit. I like the fact that you can catch things that, might save adjustments or that you might have missed out on otherwise. So I like video. I still screenshot like certain things just for the sake of so I don't have all these videos to look through and kind of consolidate it with their files. But yeah, video. And then I think I'm particular about my lighting. Are you guys as particular about your lighting?
I'm only particular if they send me some pictures and it's really bad lighting. Then I'm like, okay, let's get this changed. But for the most part, like in the initial email, there's instructions. Hey, this is how we want the pictures taken. So if it's like early on, if it's not too terrible, I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna see a whole lot anyways. But the deeper we get into this, if the lighting doesn't improve, I'm gonna say something. Hey, we need to move this. Hey, get to a gym lighting or something, just to see if I can see more as far as if this person's actually improving the way I want them to improve.
Yeah. I think early on off season, not as much of a stickler. As long as it's not terrible lighting. I've had an athlete before He's my boy too, so I can call him out, but I won't call him out. But if he listens to this, he'll know who
He'll know,
knows I'm
right?
talking about him. He was filtering his pictures, like IG filters, screenshotting him, sending him to me, and I'm like, that's
Major
cool,
faux
but but I don't need to see him like that. So yeah,
So,
I guess,
so that person always looks full.
oh, they looked grainy. Dorman hates grainy. Yeah, even though we had 15 to lose. Yeah, get the what is it? I forgot what's the name of that filter. I forgot which thing. The structure all the way up.
Yeah. I
This
always do
dude
that
filtered me in a picture once where I had the weird ass tan. Like I was orange because he was focusing on himself when he was filtering it. And I'm right next to him. And so he looks good. Doesn't bother to like fix me or hook me up. And I'm like, you post that? I look like dream tanned. But yeah, I guess lighting not as important as being consistent like early on in a prep, early general fat loss or off season. But we probably want to watch for things a little bit closer or be a little bit more particular as we get closer to stage shape. Would you guys agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and don't be too terrible. What's the word I'm looking for? Complimentary with your lighting either.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Bert's done a great job of just spreading information on lighting to the masses, because I can't get over sometimes how people can be so particular with their pictures and they get like the perfect lighting. And I'm just like, I know you don't look this good all the time, you know, and I know you don't look this good 8 pounds over stage weight. You know, I think we need to tone down the complimentary lighting here just a little bit. You know, give me something that maybe is a little bit more, you know, away from the natural light of the windows, you know, maybe turn an actual light on in the room instead of just all natural light, because sometimes that can be super deceiving too.
Oh, the sideways natural light. I
was
can
gonna
take
say.
a picture right now and you're going to see separation in my quads that you're like, I think
Yeah.
you're 10 pounds out, Bert.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, to be
but-
fair, like some people don't realize it. Like they might not be knowing that they're actually enhancing it. You know, they're just like, oh, I'm just taking a picture. I didn't realize that, you know, these certain angles of lighting are going to drastically change. Like you could, like when I do Skype posing, like when I'm doing the quarter turns on people, like, okay, they're doing, let's say the left side relax, like they look awesome because there's only so much light hitting them. So it's creating all these shadows and it's like, damn, he looks deep. Like these insertions just look deep. Then you go, okay, let's do the opposite side now. And it's like, whoa, where'd everything go? It just totally just washes them out. Like it just totally changes. So the lighting definitely plays a huge role in perception of how people are actually looking. And I think the lighting, I think it is a pretty important part. But again, we're talking more like assessing like competitive bodybuilders deeper into contest prep versus someone who's like off season or early in the prep when they're a little bit softer. Because I think early on, I'm relying more on numbers as far as progress, like what's the scale kind of saying and things like that. Then a little bit later on, I'm like, okay, I need to pay way more attention to the visuals.
Yeah. I like that order where it's just like light source, camera, and then you know,
Yeah, explain
left to
that,
right
'cause,
to left.
yeah, I think that's
That's
a great thing to kind of share right now.
Yeah, well, and since most of your lights are kind of overhead in a house, that's why I'm like, hey, just find, put the camera by a window, and your neighbors ain't gonna see you, man. Like it's like literally you can be 10 feet back, like it's not gonna be that weird. But yeah, I like the natural light source because it's not too red, it's not too orange, it's not too blue. It's kind of it tells you everything. And if there's a cut in that light, it's like you can rest assured that cut is in. So yeah, that's basically the camera's in the middle between you and the light source.
So the light source is directly in front of you. The camera's in front of the light source, and you're behind the camera. Or in front of it.
Exactly. And
like in front, not angled. That's the sides, because that's what creates those shadows.
Just a little bit of an angle, yeah. That is enough to throw that off. And like we said, the worst is probably when the light source is in the middle, right? It's and to the side, right?
Yeah.
It's like you're gonna see all sorts of cuts you didn't earn. But with the other order, if there is a cut there, if there's some separation there, it's like, you best believe that's yours. And that's going to be there through the worst of conditions, you know?
Yeah.
Some people will actually make an excuse for the overhead light. They're like, oh, because on stage, that's what they have. And I'm like, bro, you do not have lights that are nothing like stage lights in your freaking living room. Trust me on that. I don't care how expensive they were. Like stage lights, if you get under those with no tan, shredded as can be, it's gonna just wash you out.
Wash you out.
Yeah.
How many times have you seen like on Instagram and all that, you see, oh man, that guy's just shredded, like the whole prep. You're like, this guy's just peeled. He's always full and hard. And then you get on stage, you're like, wow, he looks about 30% heavier than he was on Instagram.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Because those lights on stage are going to keep you really honest. They're going to expose everything.
Yep. So
it's like you said, Berto, like having that honest light source. Like if you're shredded in that light source, then you know when you get on stage, you're probably going to duplicate that.
yeah, at the very least, for sure. You know, tan, well peaked, all that. Yeah. So yeah, I guess this is how we like our data. Are you guys with me on the training videos? Like those maybe being more, they're almost like the physique pictures of the off season, is like your training videos along with your Excel spreadsheet.
Oh yeah, because you look at, like you said, a curl 3x. Okay, yeah, they went 10 pounds on a curl since last week. They send you a video, and you're like, well, now I know why they went up 10 pounds on the curl, because now all of a sudden there's a lot of leveraging. They look like Tarzan, swinging,
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, now I got a new nickname. Like, okay, Tarzan, we need to tone that down a little bit. Let's clean that up. Yeah.
They've moved from the 60-pound dumbbell to the 75-pound dumbbell on their overhead press. And you're like, let's get a look at that. And they've gone from nice full range of motion to barely breaking 90 degrees with their elbow,
Yeah.
But I will say, in addition though to training videos, is I do like to take snapshots of their physique in the off season, like quarterly, like Jeff said. Just because I want to kind of see, okay, you know what? It's been 3 months, 6 months, 4 months, whatever. Can we actually see some changes here? Do you actually look bigger? If we're looking for a specific body part to actually improve, is that actual body part actually looking bigger? That's when I'll usually kind of insist, you know what? It's been since December of 2020, since we saw you. Let's get a look at you again in March. So your next check-in in March, send me a video, send me some pictures, whatever. I'll get screenshots and I'll put that in my little file for you, and I'll say, okay, you know what we're doing is working, or it ain't. We need to change something up. So I just wanted to kind of throw that in there too.
Also, too, if you think about it, like this is like if we're talking about physique sport or just trying to improve, body comp, it's more visual than it is number driven.
Numbers,
like,
yeah.
Like we can take a measurement of our biceps and see, okay, did I grow over 6 months? If you have to be really accurate with your measurements, but also too, this goes back to the flatness fullness topic. So let's say 6 months ago, I measure my biceps, and let's say they're 18 inches, and then 6 months from now, I measure again, they're 18 and a half. But let's say I was flat back then. Maybe, I was underfed. Maybe my sodium was low that day. Et cetera, et cetera. So I have this 18-inch measurement, and then 6 months later, I got 18 and a half. But maybe let's say I had, like the day before, I ate a ton of carbs, or, I was really bloated from sodium or what have you, or just in general, I'm like weighing 5 pounds heavier with some more body fat. That measurement is probably half inch bigger because of those things versus, oh, that's actually half inch of like real lean tissue I've put on my arm. Mm-hmm. So I think the visual is a lot more reliable, in my opinion anyways, how I assess things versus like, measurements, tape measures, that type of thing.
Yeah, and especially like when you're trying to improve like delts, for example. I'm like Bubert, I want to see that front symmetry pose. Let's get that front symmetry pose every single time, and let's evaluate those delts. Let's evaluate those lats. How do you measure your delts? Even if you did find a way to quantifiably measure them, does that transfer over into how does your front symmetry look? Because that front symmetry is what you're going to be standing in 80% of the time when you're on stage. And if we're trying to improve your V-tape or your delts or whatever, I want to see what you're looking like in that front symmetry pose. I don't care what your tape measure says, Well, however you measure that, sure, it may say that you gained a half an inch on your delts, but we don't see it in the front symmetry pose. that means it ain't working. We got to do something. We got to get you gaining weight faster. We got to get you putting more something there, So, yeah, I like to. It's a visual sport. Nobody cares what your body fat is. Nobody cares what your biceps measure. So,
you want to acutely bring up your delts, like on game days. You pump the hell out of them. And you can definitely change a little bit of your taper then and there.
Yeah. You're giving away the secrets. I don't want athletes pumping up their delts before we give out that day.
I don't even.
Don't do that for your progress pics now. Yeah,
Brad, I don't even work out, to be honest. I just on show day I just pump up and I'm like, oh, there it is.
Man. But yeah. Shoot, yeah. The delts, like you mentioned, Brad, it's like especially in those movements, you're not going to see a lot of big progressions like on a spreadsheet. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it's like, guess what? You're stuck with these 20-pound laterals like for the next 4 months, but maybe the way you do them changes. And like for that, like I need video. One thing real quick is because again, training video is like my thing. It's like I need to see it, especially in the off season. An issue that a lot of athletes have is they. For us, like we're kind of accustomed to filming ourselves. Like it's just such a secondary thing. Mm-hmm. I've been hooked on it since I was so pumped because I was filling up the leg press. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see this video once I was done. And I look at it and I see my range of motion. I'm like, oh my God, like I'm that guy. I'm the guy with the quarter squat on the leg press basically. But I had no idea, I didn't know I was doing that. So since then it became, this was like 2007. It was like a digital camera with 2006 with no audio. Actually, I just got hooked and it just became an important tool where I'm like, this is just something I need to keep me in check. And like now, if like my phone dies and I don't have my camera, it's like I almost feel a little naked in the gym.
You feel naked,
right? I need that. But yeah, a lot of athletes are kind of reserved about doing that. I know that sometimes there's gyms that don't allow for you to take, but usually that's changing, especially with social media. Like gyms want people to know that, hey, people train in our facility, right? Look how fun it looks.
Make sure you get that sign in the background when you take that video,
and people this was my thing because I felt uncomfortable initially, like recording myself in the gym, and I didn't want folks to think that, oh, this here's this conceited bastard, just like he wants everyone to see his lifts. I remember I would finish my recording and then I would like look at it with like a very extra observant look on my face, like a very okay, so that people knew that I wasn't in there just like being conceited or a creep. I'm like, this is study time. This is clearly, and honestly, I think that's how I look at things now. Like it's like after certain sets, I'll go back, I'll see, and I'm like, okay,
you're stroking your beard, huh?
Yeah, let's go fix that.
Let's clean that up. Yep.
But phones are flat. Like you can place them almost anywhere. So a lot of people, they're like, I don't have someone to record. It's like, honestly, you could place it against some other contraption, record it. You can trim it so it doesn't take up too much data on your phone. And boom, now you have data. And it's going to be, it doesn't become, you don't understand how valuable it is until you've accumulated enough of that. And you see your lateral raises with 20 pounds like now versus like 5 months ago. And sometimes it can show you that something's working, something's not working, but it's just good to keep records, man.
For sure. I do every set I record. I mean, I don't post them all those sets, but I record every one. And like you said, in between sets, I clip them. Because if I do post them, I don't want to share like me walking up to the bar. No one wants to see. That's boring. Like just clip that out. Save space on my phone too. But I even you know me, I'm such a stickler for form. Like I even watch my facial expressions. I'm like, oh shit, I'm grunting. Like I'm grimacing too much. I need to remove that energy from my face and put it in my body, the muscle I'm training. That's how like detailed I get with assessing my own form. And not to say like I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I mean, my movement pattern is really clean on most lifts. And it's because I've watched so much film. So it's kind of like you look at, football players and all that, they watch film. That's how they get better.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of talk about this a lot. I always look at other sports. How can we improve as bodybuilders by looking outside of bodybuilding? Because there's so much there that we can learn from, but we just tend to just stick to watching certain people on Instagram. And we just kind of mimic what these certain people are doing, but there's so much out there that you can pick up. So it's kind of like that Tim Duncan layup, right? Or that bank shot. Like, you know, I'm sure he's watched film on it, and coaches have watched film on it and helped him perfect it.
Yeah.
Well, and how many times do you guys, like, when you really start seeing your athletes a lot, like you're seeing them every week over and over again for like 10, 12, 16 weeks, you almost kind of start to memorize things on them, you know? You start to memorize, oh, that was not there that week. Oh, this week, that is not there. It was there last week, and I'm not seeing it now, you know? I think sometimes athletes that do not take advantage of us in that way and give us pictures, you know, like we need to see pictures of you next week. Oh, coach, I forgot. Oh, coach, you know, I couldn't get the wife to take my pictures, you know, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just like, that is such a waste. That is such a waste. I could have helped you so much in just that 1 week that you might have skipped, you know, because I could have just spotted just one thing. Because sometimes you're just shocked. I mean, there's been some times when I'm like, oh my gosh, this person now has striated glutes and they're still 3 pounds overweight, you know? And I really appreciate, like you said, Jeff, studying film, you know, and not only on how they're looking, you know, flat, full, spilled, but then also just their movements. You know, it's like you need to eliminate that bounce with your arms when you're doing that front symmetry pose. You know, we need to clean that up. We need to get you set and you just stay there, you know, and you just breathe shallowly and get rid of that bounce. Hey, when you do that quarter turn to the side there, you need to get rid of that little twitch in your whatever, you know. When you start seeing things over and over and over again, you start spotting things that need to be cleaned up. It's like studying game film, you know, just like studying. Hey, that running back ducks his head every time he's getting the ball, you know. Next time he ducks his head, he might lose it.
Yeah, no, it's those subtleties that again, it's like if you don't have the data, you're gonna miss out on a whole lot.
Really quick favor, guys. If you enjoy these shows and have been a listener for quite some time, we would really, really, really appreciate it if you could take the time to give us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever your preferred podcast app may be. Having lots of ratings and audience feedback makes our show become more visible across multiple platforms, and it supports our mission of helping as many people as we can to be the best athletes, coaches, and lifting enthusiasts that they could possibly be. So if you're not driving and wouldn't be dangerous, pause this thing right now and give us an honest review over on your podcast app, and we would love you even more than we already do. Thanks for taking the time, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Going back a bit to just like the straight up physique stuff. Okay, off season, quarterly, right? Quarterly, monthly. You know, sometimes, as Jeff said, if someone just needs a more frequent picture reportings, that's absolutely fine. How about for just I guess general fat loss?
Yeah, I think similar to contest prep, but I think pictures is suitable because, you know, it's not like we're trying to like put out a perfect physique in a sense. Mm-hmm. So I think photos is suitable. I mean, if someone wants to send me pictures, I mean, that's fine too, or video rather, that's fine too. But as far as their frequency is concerned, it's very similar to prep. I think early on it can be maybe bi-weekly because we are trying to lean down. So I do want to see if there's any visual progression every couple weeks. So that's kind of, you know, more my take, you know, with general fat loss.
Mm-hmm. And the frequency, you like weekly, Jeff? About
bi-weekly, yeah.
Bi-weekly, yeah. I like.
If we're just like if it's a mini cut or just like a fat loss phase for someone who's just trying to look better in general. Yeah, I think bi-weekly is sufficient.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say that if it's more of an aggressive cut, like it's a hurry up 3 week, let's get down a few pounds, get back out. Maybe we just get at the beginning and then at the end. But if it's longer, you know, I like to have things every couple of weeks, every third week, something like that. Again, I want to make sure what we're doing is working. and not just on the tape measure side and the scale side, but are we actually seeing some visible changes here? And plus, I love it when you get that like perfect nirvana, like of pictures where it's like, wow, this person's lost 4 pounds and they look like they've lost a dozen, or they've lost no weight and they're visibly leaner. Sometimes it's just worth the price of admission when you can get one of those like every year.
Yeah. Man, I like my video. I like my video too much. Just, again, the same thing. You can catch little things. It's like, yo, that little roll you had here when you turn around, like, it's gone, and we wouldn't have caught that missing roll otherwise, right? So I like that part. And I think with the pictures, maybe it's as infrequent as I need, because we base our lives off that Gregorian calendar. He wasn't a bodybuilder; he didn't understand, right? So people expect things every week, and it doesn't always work that way. Like if you see someone who lost 15 pounds, like if you were to go back and to see the average for every week, it's like it's kind of all over the place, and quite often there's a time where it's like you hit a plateau, but you definitely did. There was not a plateau. You kept things the same, and boom, there's all the weight loss we were waiting for. So I think usually I'll gauge it based off what kind of loser I think they are, the good kind of loser, and that I did not set myself up for that. I was like, oh no, I gotta correct myself. Like if I have a woman who's like very lower body fat dominant, it's like, all right, you know what? We're going to expect things in like 3-week blocks or something like that. If I get a guy like, like my colleagues here, Brad or Jeff, like it's like, oh, they hold it all in the middle. Their limbs are lean. It's like with this dude, it's like, we'll plan it for every 2 weeks. We'll see stuff, but we'll probably see things fly off every week, So, I guess kind of depends on what I think they should expect is how frequently I want that data over. And quite often we'll just sit on something that makes sense. Because, the truth is if you know how to set up the calories and the cardio that are most likely going to work, like it's fat loss is most likely happening so long as they adhere. And you can kind of just like sit back and let time do its thing. So yeah, videos, I guess, and then like how frequently do I have them send that in is just based off the expectations that I think they should have. Gentlemen like you two, it's like I think they'll probably see things every week, but we'll do it every 2 weeks just for the sake of helping them build up that patience, because the scale gets stuck regardless.
I mean, because you think about again, like early on, like when we're running cuts, obviously we have higher body fat percentages, so you're not going to see as much visual change early on.
Yeah.
Like when you lose a pound, like if someone's 200 pounds with 20% body fat, you lose a pound early on, you're not going to notice that visibly. But when you're at 180 pounds and you lost 20 pounds already and you lose a pound, that's going to look strikingly different. You're going to see that. You'll probably even see a quarter pound coming off, and it's going to make a huge difference. So that's why sometimes when you look at the numbers, some people get a little frazzled, right? Oh, I only lost a quarter pound this week. I thought we were trying to get a pound off, and they want to, change some things. But, visually you're like, whoa, a lot happened over the course of the last week or two with that quarter or half pound you lost. So, sometimes, you have to kind of discern like what's the better tool to use to gauge progress. So I think that's a good question for us is like visually, how do we kind of know like maybe when to make a change or not make a change? Even when the numbers are probably telling us one way or another what we should do.
Then that's a good segue too, Jeff, into like when I like to see people more often. Because like you said, you drop 2 pounds early on in prep, it's not as visible, or at least if it is visible, you got to really look at it and you got to kind of take the client's word for it. It's like, yeah, I noticed the other day that this looked, remarkably leaner. But when I see 2 pounds on the number side and it looks dramatically different, it looks like they just lost like 2% body fat. It's like, oh, now we need to start seeing more often. We need to start seeing pictures more often. We need to start kind of thinking about assessing when you're flat and when you're full and when, you need to calm down and not be freaked out when you're flat, because you're going to see that. You're going to actually see changes in the fullness of your muscles at this point, especially if you lose 2 pounds in 2 weeks, and you see a dramatic change, in your body fat. That's usually kind of almost like my line of delineation. Now we need to start seeing things more often, is when we saw the same amount of weight loss that we always usually see, or whatever it is we expect, but now it looks dramatically different. Because it always seems to happen, as there's that one point where it's like, now you look like you lost a lot more than what the scale is showing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're not always in agreement, like the scale and the pictures.
Exactly.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is bullshitting you. You just got to kind of figure out which one it is, right? Jeff, the point you were making, I guess, give me an example of like when you've kind of had to, I guess, bust that specific move.
So a lot of times, like depending, let's give some context. Like, so let's say you're digging somebody, right? You're trying to get a little bit more fat loss, maybe you lowered calories down, maybe activity's elevated. So in a sense, physical stress is a little bit amplified. And then, a week, 2 weeks go by with those protocols and you see nothing on the scale. You're like, and oftentimes you're like, oh, you're actually up a pound. You're like, what's going on here? And we're just going to say that this person doesn't cheat on their diet. So, okay, there's no way this person gained body fat, but why is this scale weight up? And that's when the visuals become important. Like, what does this individual look like? Do I see any visual progress? Does it look like this person's leaner? If the person does look like, from my subjective eye, does it look like this person's leaner? Yes. Then I know, okay, this person's probably just retaining some water weight because of the overall demand and stress. So, hey, okay, maybe it's a good idea to not lower calories down because the scale's not moving, but hey, maybe this person needs a refeed or two. See if we can recharge the batteries a bit, lower overall stress levels down, and see if the scale cooperates. Like, okay, not as much stress, maybe the water retention kind of dissipates. So you can lose body fat even though the scale weight is up.
Yes,
because of the water weight. So I see sometimes it's like, that's why I like to give myself plenty of time with athletes as far as prep time, so I can be a little more conservative with adjustments. I don't want to have to just like, oh shit, scale didn't move. I'm running out of time here. I'm not 100% certain it's water retention, but because of the timeline, I got to push things. So I'm going to lower these calories down. And maybe that's a bad decision because maybe it just amplifies stress even more. And maybe now their training is suffering, et cetera, et cetera. So I tend to want to have a little extra time so I can just be conservative, say, hey, okay, we've made the adjustment a week or 2 weeks ago. Let's ride it out a little bit longer and see what we get. And if, another week goes by and visibly I don't see anything happening and scale's not happening, okay, then I know for certain I probably need to be a little more assertive with some type of cut. But it's oftentimes you'll see that, you'll see the scale not doing what you think it's going, you want it to do, but you just have to wait it out. You're like, okay, visibly, let's see if I'm seeing the changes.
I personally like to look at the video first, and then I go to the spreadsheet to see if I guessed it right. Just when
I answer reports, and I talked about this on the webinar I did yesterday. Basically, what I do is I open up a report. I either look at the photos or the video first, so that way I'm not swayed one way or another by what the athlete is saying. Once I kind of assess the visual, I'm like, okay, this is what I think I'm seeing. Then I go on the spreadsheet and look at the numbers, and let's see if that kind of backs it up or not. And then I go to the check-in to see what their subjective view is on what kind of they're seeing or what they're experiencing, and see if it lines up or not. So it's kind of like a process, a system I go through. So it checks to kind of see what type of adjustments I need to make. And sometimes the adjustment, maybe we do need to lower calories or what have you, but depending on what the person is experiencing in our timeline, if it's just really brutal, they're just having a hard time, I probably might not lower calories. I might do the opposite. Hey, look, let's give you a diet break or something like that. Let's get your head above water. When you catch some air, okay, now let's go ahead and dive back under and go at it.
I oftentimes have had the best luck with peaking people on bodybuilding stage when I've screwed them up one time during prep, and hopefully keep your fingers crossed, it was like way away from the competition, 10, 12, 15 weeks. But, a couple of clients come to mind, both male and female, where it's kind of like I'm looking at their video, their picture, whatever it was they're sending me. One guy, it was consistently video that he was sending. And every week he was looking worse. He was in that particular stage where it was kind of like he was pretty lean. And so I was expecting to see deeper lines and more definition, and it was just getting worse. It was just getting worse and worse and worse every week. And of course, I'm looking at these videos and I'm looking at my numbers, and the scale's not dropping. It's not really gaining, but it's not dropping. And so I'm thinking to myself, what's going on here? And then finally, of course, it's kind of hit you in the head like a brick. It's like, wow, there's no way this person just gained a pound or 2 pounds this week in either body fat nor muscle. It's impossible for your body to have synthesized that. The reason he's looking so much worse is because he's getting all this fluid and probably cortisol and lactic acid that's obscuring all of what normally is some pretty lean, muscle bellies that should be showing through that body fat. And
sorry, would you consider that like the spilled look?
Well, it's the spilled look, but it's not necessarily glycogen.
Yeah.
It's that other fluid, cortisol or whatever, that your body produces from basically the supply not meeting the demand. And a lot of times in those cases, I won't even make an adjustment to diet. I'll just say, you know what? Let's take a day, 4 days, 5 days off from training. Let's drop your volume. Let's do something here first, and then we'll see what happens. And in the particular case that I'm mentioning, immediately things started showing up. They weren't magically fixed, but they started showing up, and pretty soon now we're kind of starting to see the scales dipping down a little bit. Okay, now let's give you a little bit more food. And sometimes, that's like the perfect world when it's kind of like you give people more food and that becomes their diet numbers. You ever have that happen? And it's like, okay, now we're giving the body the supply that it needs, and we've kind of matched the demand to it, and we can start actually making progress again. If I'm lucky enough to have that happen to a client, like 12, 15 weeks out from a show, I can always peak them better. Because then I know, okay, if I do this change to their volume, it's going to look bad on their body.
Yeah,
Let's
you
not
kind of
do that.
You learn where their thresholds are at.
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Or I know that if I'm going to dig on the calorie side, I better adjust training like so. And you just kind of figure out that person a little bit better. And I always peak them better when I can experience that, at least at some point during the prep. But that kind of goes without, at least in my opinion, Bert, if you're not going to take the conversation this way, when is it that you guys feel like you can actually see those kind of changes? When can you actually see a full versus a flat muscle versus a spilled muscle versus I should be seeing things, but I'm not because of fluids and substrates and things like that?
Yeah. First, I think this is the most, when it comes to visual data, probably the most delicate part of our job. And I think the part that people they were like really remote coaching this way in regards to, like peaking an athlete. Well, first of all, peaking, right? Like 3-5%, right? That's I think it's the same for powerlifting in regards to like their tapers. It's like that's what you can expect to get. It's like about 3 to 5% above where you're at, which some good competition that could be the difference, right? So 3 to 5% is what we're going for, and the look you just described, Brad, it's like you're flat but you're holding water, which can happen, right? And then the opposite, the spilled over, basically is like you're full and you're so full now that you're also holding water. So it's like you can hold water almost regardless of where you're at. And yeah, there is a point in a contest prep where it's like we could just see that in a person's body. It's like you're just taking them through that messed up part. Kind of a sidetrack story, but I think it's worth mentioning because it's kind of funny. And I just learned this the other week. Because you don't, it's like at a certain point, we all kind of rebel against like being like our parents. It's like, oh, I'm not like my dad. So my dad pisses me off because like I see a lot of things in myself that I see, and I'm like, that's exactly how I would have been frustrated. Like I would have done that exact same gesture that he just did. So when I prep, I have this issue, and it's been reoccurring for a while, where I get rashes. right? Just spontaneous get rashes, right? And for the biggest time, for the longest, I thought it was just me overheating sometimes, because it would usually happen, like at night, like indoors typically. So, and I know what to do. It's like as soon as I feel like it's coming, it's like I pop a Benadryl and boom, it's like done, and like it goes away, right? But every girl that I've dated during the prep, like it's just I always get in trouble for it. It's like I start kind of rolling around in bed, and it's like I'm the one to blame. She's like, "You're rashing up, aren't you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I am." So I go get my Benadryl and stop rolling around. But I found out that my dad would get rashes when he would be working on the car, and it would frustrate him. And he'd get frustrated and flustered. Like my mom's like, "Oh yeah, your dad used to rash up," and it's crazy because here I am. Like usually when I prep, I do my things, but generally speaking, like I'm like pretty cool and relaxed about the whole thing. It's like it's a big whatever almost, but internally your body is still messed up. So I don't even know quite, like I'm having a normal ass day, and I start to rash up, and you know how stress is, it kind of just hides, and when we're prepping, it's like our wick just gets a little bit smaller in regards to like what we can handle, right? It's like the state that we're in, especially when we're digging, the training, obviously that deadline that's coming, and then you have to handle the rest of your life. So boy, does it beat you up. And that's why we see the look that Brad just talked about, where you kind of have to remove an athlete for a while and kind of reset them a little bit. And that's essentially what we're trying to do when we peak. It's like we're trying to have you look like $1,000,000, even though for the last 20 plus weeks you've been through some shit, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, peaking wise, I'd say about the halfway point is where I start to, is about where most people, it's like, I think when they start telling you like, I feel great, coach, I feel normal. It's like, no, that's when you're starting to lose your crap, when you have to emphasize that part. So, and this is again, like, your athletes, like with the weekly check-ins, when we have them do the Dear Diary with video, just from like talking to them and seeing how they're just doing, even if they're not addressing it directly, it's like you can kind of tell how they're doing, right? So generally speaking, about the halfway point, and I think there is because we rotate our refeeds. We have refeeds pretty much weekly for most of our athletes, right? And those are like little sneak previews in regards to like how we fill up and flatten out, and obviously it changes a little bit as you continue. But those are our practice runs, and they bring a lot of utility to other things, the training, less situations like the one that Brad just mentioned, where you're like flat, watery, beat up. Like that kind of minimizes that, so that as a coach you could get better looks. But with our refeeds and cycling our carbs, it's like we get all these little previews, and throughout about the last half of the prep, right, guys, we're typically looking at what we see, and basing off that information, we decide how we go about peaking this athlete, right?
Pretty much. Like I even like maybe a month away from a show. Like,
Yeah.
okay, let me get more video around these refeeds.
Yes.
So I know it's kind of a pain in the ass to do it, but it's such a valuable tool, because if you were to take video first thing in the morning, flat, prior to the refeed, about an hour, 2 hours after all that food is in for the day, do it again, another video. Let's see what you're looking like. Try to get, roughly the same lighting conditions. You can see what the differences is from morning to night on that day. If it's a 2-day refeed, you repeat the process again, and then you do it on the third day. And maybe that's a low day. You do it again. You can see visually what the differences are, where that best look is around those refeeds. So like you said, Berto, it's kind of like a preview, test runs. So that way, you can, in a sense, have a very like educated guess as far as how things are going to go during peak week. But during peak week, because we're like, oh shit, shows in 5 days, the stress level is amplified. So how do you keep this person from losing their shit, raising cortisol levels because of the stress? So a lot of that's mental. So I still say my best ever peak, as far as like staying as cool as the other side of the pillow, was a pro international. Like the day before, I just remember like I was just in like Zen mode. Like nothing could faze me. Nothing was bothering me. I was just so calm and collected.
Yeah.
The night before the show, I was watching NFL Network, just chilling out. And man, even the day of the show, I was just so cool and calm. I've never been so cool for a show. So I need to revisit that, what I did. But But yeah, I think those visuals, the frequency definitely heightens around a peak week. And leading into the show, the week of the show, then now we're looking at pictures like daily or video daily to see what kind of changes we're looking at. Because, you can see the flatness and fullness because now we're looking at a physique that is very minimal body fat. So things are going to be very noticeable. You might see changes happening within an hour.
Yeah.
Or even shorter time than that. I remember I had one athlete at the NGA California, and I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head. I feel bad now. But anyways, this guy will look flat in the morning. And I think Brad was at the show, so he'll probably remember once I say it. And I said, dude, we're flat. I want you to eat half a pizza. Or it might even be a little small personal pizza. But literally, within 30 to 45 minutes, it was like a changed man. Like he just blew up. So like the carbs, it was probably more the sodium than it was the carbs because a little more acute, got the blood pressure going. And then you throw a good pump on top of that. And yeah, it just transformed him. So it's pretty wild how the physique can change from flat.
It's probably
to full.
the pizza too, because low pizza make you forget about all your problems. Especially
you feel good, yeah. Because he was happy. Right? Pizza, really?
For 50 minutes, he's like,
I remember that. He was a good-looking kid too. I cannot remember his name, but you're right, Jeff. I remember that because even I had a client there too, and you can see blood pressure. I swear you can see blood pressure when you're in actual competition shape, and that's when I really kind of start almost to like insisting I don't want video at this point. I want to see pictures like almost every 4 to 5 hours, like hourly. It's Thursday, the show is Saturday. I want to see what you look like this morning when you first got up. I want to see you 2 hours after your first meal. I want to see you at night, and that's when I want to see my pictures, and I can just either on my phone or like I said, those clients that are super anal and they put the photo collage together, and I can see here was morning, here was 4 hours later, here was 8 hours later. That's when I really want my photos, because unless I've got a way to compare my videos side by side, it's really hard for me to assess those subtle changes. And yeah, like sometimes they'll say, okay, here's what we're going to do. I want you to down like you said, Jeff, something salty, just something salty. I want you to get like 12 ounces of water, and I want you to send me pictures in about 2 hours. And they're like, Coach, I got this like kind of miniature little headache. I'm like, your blood pressure went up. Yes. And then we can see it. Look at how much fuller you look, because you get that intramuscular pressure in there on top of the carbs and all those substrates that are now actually in the muscle, and not kind of floating around in between. It's like, okay, now we kind of know what we're going to do come tomorrow or come the day after tomorrow, kind of, whatever.
I just want to say,
I've learned from you guys on how to spot those changes, because I used to suck at that.
I
you guys are still the masters.
I need to follow up with this. Like, if you're hearing this about the pizza, don't do that unless you know what you're doing or your coach says have pizza. But because remember, this is an athlete that I worked with for many, many weeks leading up into a show. So it was definitely in the plan.
Man.
Well, and that's why, like I said, your guys' eyes, are so good. I've learned so much about those looks, and still do, from you guys. I'll never forget when Berto said, you know what? You can spot that fullness kind of in the thinner muscle bellies, kind of in the abs and in the hamstrings, and things like that. You can really spot that fullness versus flatness. So yeah, you need to have a good eye when you need to have pizza, or your coach needs to have a good eye when they say that you need to have pizza.
Well, like for me, when I look at my physique, when I like assess mine, like the body part I don't look at is my hamstrings, because that's my most dominant body part. So it's always going to look good, even if I am looking flat, it's still going to be prominent. So I look at more like my back, which tends to be the body part tends to look the flattest when I am flat, or even my chest. I'll look at those two things more so than like the strong body part. So I think if you're kind of unaware of how to assess what's flat and what's full, well, don't look at the body part part that's always going to stand out. You always see the guy, oh shoot, I'm going to look at my biceps in the mirror, because they always look good. It's like, no, look at the body part that looks, the worst. Even if you are full, it's not going to be as prominent as some of those other ones.
Ooh. You know what? I think, getting into this, that's where we should go next. Is probably like the flat or full. Before we get into that, just one last thing on the whole, like water retention and all that. Obviously your training's going to do that, just the situation you're in. But I think something that goes a long way is just keeping your stuff in order and learning to kind of consolidate stress. I think that is huge. Like you said, Jeff, when you were Zen, you looked your best. My athletes tend to be more just kind of almost go with the flow, but they take care of their stuff. They also seem to be the more predictable, and hardly ever do they look like that beat up towards the end of a prep. Every time I've peaked well, it's been for a show that I haven't really cared a whole lot for. Like every NPC show I've done, it's like I'm back there putting my dream tan, and I'm like, well, if you guys beat me, y'all on steroids, so it's whatever, like we're just gonna have some fun. The only pro show I won, same thing. I'm like, it's an April show, who cares? Just go out there and do it.
2019, I did like all those 7 shows. The one that I peaked the best at was a guest posing. Because there was no pressure. It was like, I'm just going to go guest pop and go have fun. And it was pretty chill. And I picked the best. Like that was like, I'm frustrated because I didn't get too many great pictures, but I was like, that was the best look of the whole season right there. And it was because it wasn't a competitive show. So I need to take that same mindset towards competitive shows. And I have to, even myself, because I always preach this, have fun. Like, so that should be a celebration, right? That's what you're working hard for. That's basically your celebration of all the hard work. So I need to basically kind of revisit that myself when I compete this year.
Yeah, that matters so much.
Makes a difference. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Matters so much, and it just makes it so much more enjoyable. You'll actually remember the day of your show that way, So I guess water retention, like it's either from being spilled or just the situation at hand. But I guess let's go over like flat, full, all the in betweens. How do you guys like to assess that usually?
Well, I think first of all, go ahead, Jeff. You go first.
I was gonna say it's hard to know what flat and full is if you don't have something to compare it to.
Yeah.
So like when we're like, again, higher body fat percentages, it's going to be really hard to decipher what is flat and full because the body fat kind of hides a lot of that. So it's usually when you're a little bit on the leaner side, you can kind of tell the differences. Like when you actually, in a sense, it's like when you look better and don't look not as good. So flat for me, how I kind of define that would be like when your muscles don't really have no pop to it. The skin isn't like grabbing the muscle as much. So it just looks like you look a little bit filmy. But there's spilled to me would be like my muscle is full. Like I look big. There's a lot of roundness there, but still the skin kind of just looks blurry. Like it's not super tight. And then hard would be like, or grainy would be considered like the muscle is just like really full, round. And the skin is just wrapped around it like shrink wrap, and everything is just really prominent. So, and you can, like, the way I kind of think of flat too is like, okay, if I know this person looks flat, then chances are like, it's probably they've been running maybe some lower calorie days because carbs are on the lower side, glycogen's depleted. Also too, like if you're dehydrated, you can look flat and spilly too from fluid. Or lack thereof. So those are some of the things that I kind of look at.
And Jeff, some people fluctuate less, like between like flat and full. I don't remember super off the top of my head, but I'm gonna go out on a limb, and I think that was Vernon one of those guys that maybe didn't like fluctuate that much? Like,
no,
just
like
a little sprinkle just did him. Yeah.
Or Josh. Josh is another guy that like he always looks full, even when he's flat. Like because I've worked with him, I kind of know what flat looks versus full on him, but he looks full all the time. But I do have some of those athletes, like it's like you can go low calories and it's like they still look full of shit.
Yes, yeah. It's not that big of a difference. It's like they don't go down to 70%. It's like they're down to 85%, and it just
So with
flatlines
them,
there.
it's like you don't need to do an extreme peak. It's like, okay, let's just keep things fairly even keeled. Maybe a slight bump in carbs, maybe a little sodium before pumping up, and they're golden.
Yeah. Now, and I mentioned Vernon because Nsima was kind of the exact opposite. Like Nsima would, if he was on food, like on low food long enough, like he'd look beat up. He looks stringy. He's a big dude, but he looks stringy. And I remember Vernon. I was like, could you just be more like this Vernon dude? Because he just flatlines the whole way, So you have to get to know your athlete, and I there's a camp out there that's very anti-refeed, and to me it's like, well, look, if you're someone who is prone to the contest prep stress and how that can make you look watery and filmy and just messed up, and it's hard to see what's going on, maybe you should refeed, right? And then also, if you just want good data, so you're just not throwing darts in the dark, maybe you should refeed for that same reason, so that you can have minimal beat upness going into the peak week, and kind of know what look it is that we're trying to catch, and like how to time that so that we can catch it and get that look that you described, Jeff, where it's like we're hard, we're big, we're full, but at the same time we have all our separation and our skin looks tight, and we're just hydration and sodium away from making it happen.
Yeah. I don't want to make this a refeed, not refeed podcast, but I mean, through my own personal experiences of doing many, many contest preps without refeeds, it's such a great tool to have. If you think of it about supply and demand, like if you're always like, okay, your calories are always the same, carbs are always the same, you're losing, even if it's a conservative pace, inevitably as that prep goes down the road, the overall demand escalates. So when you get, a little bit in that gray area where you're like, okay, my training's starting to struggle a little bit here, recovery's starting to struggle a little bit. I mean, to me, it makes sense. Like, hey, take your foot off the gas, put it on the brake, eat more food. You're going to recharge the batteries. Yeah, you might not lose the 1% that you're trying to lose this week. Maybe it's 0.75%. But now your training is like totally amplified and recovery is improved. Your overall stress level is lower. So now you have a better chance of, maybe retaining a little bit more muscle because of, the pit stops that you're taking. And not to mention, like you said earlier, Berto, like your stress levels just totally amplify when you're in a deficit. So you're going to, in a sense, as far as like being a better human, you have a better chance of being a better human outside of prep because you're just a little bit more well fed, even if it's temporary. So to me, it's like it's a great tool to have. And I think sometimes when we get put in these camps, or that's how the information is dispersed, like it's more of like bad, good, or hey, this is right, wrong. I mean, I think we should be open-minded to say, hey, everything that's out there can be a tool that has utility. It just depends on the context around it.
Yeah, and those refeeds, it was kind of like what I was talking about earlier when I was talking about screwing something up or screwing somebody up accidentally. Those refeeds will help you define on a particular athlete flat versus full versus spilled. And in fact, I can't tell you how many times I've actually purposely just overfed somebody and spilled them so I know what it looked like, So you kind of have to back up a little bit and you kind of have to say, okay, at some point you got to be able to see that. And just like you alluded to, Jeff, you got to be lean enough. At some point you've got to be lean enough that you can kind of see those things. And usually for me, because I don't have as good an eye as you guys do, but usually like if I can start to see some delt striation, at that point there, you're pretty darn lean. You're not stage lean, but you're pretty darn lean. And then at that point, when I'm starting to see delt striation, usually, there's a good separation. I'll run a series. Okay, we got to lose some weight here. I'm going to purposely run a series of low days here, and I'm just going to make you flat. So I know what that looks like, and then what we'll do is we'll say, okay, let's go ahead and get you a refeed or something like that. Let's get you filled up. Let's see what it takes to fill you up, what that looks like, and then kind of give them that break for a little while. Let's just kind of diet break here for a little bit. And then I'm going to send you out to pizza. I want to spill you so I can see what that looks like, you know. And then also it always helps me because I'm such a visual person. I'll have the people, you know, kind of just take notes for me. You know, you're pretty darn lean here. Squeeze the skin outside of your delt. Squeeze the skin on your leaner and your fatter areas. What does it feel like? You know, and then I'll put all my little notes in my little spreadsheet. You know, it's like, okay, we gave this person this much food on this day. Maybe I'll stick a little screenshot of their video or, you know, a little picture in there and shrink it down in the little spreadsheet. This is what they look like, you know, and just all those little tools. You're going to miss out on that, you know, if you're just always, because like you, Jeff, I mean, I used to just run diets that were like a linear periodization.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just lower calories, lower calories, lower calories, and you just randomly, like once a week or every 10 days, just
and then
took something away.
You have what you called a refeed that has a different type of label. It's called the bench. So I remember when I worked at the auto plant, man, it was like really deep in the prep. I was pretty damn lean, and I was starving. Like I was driving home from work going, fuck, I just ate my food half hour ago.
The pizza.
I am effing starving. I just and I couldn't take it. I could not take it. So I don't care what research is out there telling me I should or shouldn't refeed. I was starving regardless. So what am I going to do? I'm going to okay, I can't have more food because this camp says I shouldn't be refeeding. No, what ended up happening was I stopped at 7-Eleven and at least I bought Metrex bars. I didn't buy a bunch of candy bars, but I ate 4 Metrex bars on the way home from work that day. And instantly I felt so much better. Physically I felt fucking fantastic. but mentally I was beating myself. I remember I was so disgusted with myself that I ate these Metrex bars. How can I break my diet? I was so disgusted. And then looking in hindsight, my body needed it.
Probably the best thing you needed.
It was the best thing that I could have did was to basically pit stop, give my body some energy it needed. And in the story is I ended up I think it was 2002, and that was when I did the Texas Shredder. I was shredded. I was pilled. I wasn't I missed out because I had 4 Metrex bars. So, but it was a valuable lesson. Okay, you know, there are thresholds that your body that you can take. Everybody's going to have a breaking point. So some people, for context, you know, some people need refeeds. Maybe it's just mentally. I need a refeed to keep adherence going and keep things going. So it just depends on individual. It depends on context. And on the flip side, I've had athletes where, you know, the refeeds are very rare. You know, it's maybe it's once a month, maybe every 3 weeks, maybe it's every other week or something like that. But there's not one athlete that I've prepped over the last 10 years where there wasn't at least, you know, a refeed in there every other week or every third week, just because it's a good tool for utility.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's good to know, especially come peak week, this is how many carbs and how many days it takes to be full. This is about how long it takes before they start to flatten out. And this is just going to let you, with all that knowledge, you can be able to be more dynamic during the peak week and get what you want. If you need a little trouble Thursday, it's you know what? Go look at my data. This is about what I can expect if you know, we're a little spilled. If we cut it down to here, I think we'll be at a good place come Friday, and then from there we can fill it in with the small rocks basically. So it's just good to know what to expect. During peak weeks, we want to be predictable above anything else, and yeah, we're not out here trying to hit home runs necessarily because that hardly ever works out. You know, it's you know, like in any other sport, right? Like if you haven't hit a 600-pound deadlift in training, maybe you shouldn't put 615 on that bar. You know, it's the same thing with the peak week. It's we kind of know what we can aim for in regards to being topped out because we've kind of seen it almost every you know, week leading up to that, and we just want to have one of our finer days come contest day. So yeah, but a lot of it, I think, there's also a lot of soft skill and a lot of just learning how to manage your athletes and getting them, you know, under control and situated and feeling comfortable and confident in whatever the process is. So yeah, it's more than just pictures It's also people handling at the end of the day. Like you said, Jeff, that's one of my things that I really, without giving that too much attention, with the whole like, don't refeed, it's for the weak, it's for the people who can't like hack it mentally. It's like everyone I know has a breaking point. There's so many like world-class bodybuilders that I know that for some freaking reason they decide to tell me everything. And I'm like, man, if people knew that happened, they'd be shocked. And inside I'm like, well, they're dispensing that to me, but it's like, maybe you should tell people that, because the whole sports psychology thing, like now we're finally starting to really understand how that can help athletes get the most out of themselves. And even though we're not we're cosmetic athletes, nevertheless, like the more cool and calm and collective we can be up here, not running around in like this fight or flight mode, the better off we're going to be, right?
Again, looking at other sports, like I love looking at tennis, because look how much control and poise you have to have. Like I just watched the men's final at the Australian Open, and what's the guy? What's his name? I forget his name. The guy that lost. He just lost his cool through the match. He would lose like every point he lost. He was just shaking his head with frustration, and it just, you can see him just melting under the pressure because he wasn't staying poised. And it was just like, and Djokovic was just basically just in the zone. Like he was just totally poised. Every stroke he was hitting, like it was just like so much power and control. I think we can, again, learn a lot by watching other sports. And I think oftentimes, like you said, Berto, like we don't think about the thought process, how we think, how that impacts the physical. So yeah, I think that goes a long ways.
Yeah.
Different podcast maybe.
Yeah. No. If Helms were here, I'd have him crack open the mechanisms behind the fight or flight, because they definitely, I'll tell you that they won't make you look better, and towards, for most people, towards the tail end of preps, that's what we're trying to kind of manage and control,
yeah, because that's ultimately what it boils down to, right? We want you to look your finest on show day. And so if we can get like this perfect zenith of all these different factors to kind of just align up, and the planets almost to align, that's kind of what it's all about. If we can figure out what stressors a person seems to really respond to, let's try to eliminate those stressors. If we find out that this person actually is fuller when we kind of make the environment this way, using this kind of food, we're going to kind of try to duplicate that on show day. Because it's not, like you said, Bert, we're not going to make a home run here. It's not like it's this, we're down 3 and we've got 2 on the diamond and I got to make a home run. That's the last place you want to be. Get in shape, get lean, and then use all your data points so that you can make your show day look like the finest day that you have had, during your prep, and make all those little things perfectly align.
Awesome. So data, lots of data. I think maybe we should name that podcast. But
I think one last point to kind of maybe close on is that like if you're a coach, like I think what we've kind of touched on but really didn't like actually blurt it out is that like what Brad's talking about, like he collects the data, he puts it in a spreadsheet, like he has a system of how he goes about it, how he collects his data. There needs to be a system in place so that way you can assess things very accurately, within that system. And he's consistent with the data, like he's consistent with the process and the system. So from the start of prep to the very end, he has all the data that he's collected within that spreadsheet. So I think it's important that, especially because it's like teaching someone how to discern what is flat and full, that's really comes down to more of an experience thing than it is, I need to like really dive into research. We might learn the mechanisms behind it, but you have to actually see it and experience it. So I think, again, just setting up a system and a process for yourself to help you discern that, I think is pretty important.
Yeah. You have all the data, it kind of unravels on its own, right? All right, gentlemen. So I think we covered most everything we wanted to. Jeff, you're looking extra flat.
I was going to say, I'm a little flatter now because it's been, about 90 minutes or so later. So I need to eat, fill myself out a little bit. But, by let's say Sunday, Monday of the end of this week, early next week, I'm going to look pretty full after those refeeds.
Hey. All right, peeps. Well, thank you for joining us. We appreciate everyone tuning in and all the good questions that you guys do send our way, because that is often as most of the time, how we get our ideas. So this is Bert Nunez and the troops at 3D Muscle Journey Troops, Jeff Alberts, Brad Loomis, full, flat, and medium, signing out.
What's going on, 3DMJers? Eric Helms here. Thanks for listening to our podcast. I just want to take a second to tell you about MASS, Monthly Applications in Strength Sport. This is a monthly research review that I put out with Greg Knuckles, Dr. Mike Zerdos, and Dr. Eric Trexler, where we cover the most up-to-date, peer-reviewed research in the world of strength and physique sport that's directly relevant to your practice as a coach or an athlete. We provide our reviews in written format, but also, since you enjoy our podcast, in audio roundtable reviews where we discuss the research in depth. Finally, we also do video concept reviews where we cover a broader topic in video format for your learning. For fitness professionals, you can take quizzes on MASS content and earn continuing education credits for most of the biggest certifying bodies in the fitness industry. If you want to sign up and get a subscription, head over to 3dmusclejourney.com and click on the products tab. Thanks for your time, and thanks for listening.